Today, on episode 107 of Rail Talk, we react to the controversy surrounding Paco Lopez's 6-month suspension, recap the Winning Your In weekend from Santa Anita and Aqueduct, and look forward to a big day for the home teams this weekend at Keeneland and at Aqueduct. I'm Joe Bianca. I'm an ownership advisor at West Point Thoroughbreds. And John, the race is on. The Giants have gotten their first win. The Jets are still winless. The breathtaking, death-defying race to 4-13 has begun in earnest.
Jonathan Green, general manager of DJ Stable. And Joe, as bad as our teams are, the flip side is the only undefeated element in MetLife Stadium is still the turf monster. It has caused the grief and destruction of so many careers. It's unbelievable. But yeah, as my, I was flying home when the Giants were playing, and my son-in-law texted me, the good news is the Giants won. The bad news is we're not meant for nice things.
That's true. And, the crazy thing is they're having the World Cup final there next year at MetLife, and they're putting grass in for that.
Yeah.
And the soccer, the FIFA and the soccer gods were not going to put the World Cup on here with artificial turf. So that should tell you all you need to know about how much the owners in this town value the athletes that they actually employ.
Let's start the show.
The opinions expressed on Rail Talk are those of hosts Joe Bianca and Jon Green and do not reflect those of anybody we work with or work for. Rail Talk is sponsored by Fasig-Tipton. Shout out to Fasig-Tipton. The Pomona sale was last week, and I didn't lie. We did buy a horse. West Point did buy a horse from that sale. We bought a colt by Olympiad, who we really like and who the partners have liked as well. Got 100% of him, and he's almost sold out already. So shout out to the West Point partners, and shout out to Fasig for putting on that sale. A lot of really nice horses out there. Calbred program. I know California racing in general is kind of in a murky spot going forward, but the Calbred program is still really strong. You can also find some horses by some nice Kentucky sires and Kentucky pedigrees that just happen to be Calbreds. So I definitely would, if you have any kind of inkling or thought of running in California in the years to come, I would definitely go check out that sale next year because there's a lot of quality, and I don't think everybody's tuned in or turned on to it at this current moment. So going forward, we have the Saratoga Fall. First of all, we have the Mid-Atlantic Fall Yearling Sale, which is going on today, the day we're recording. But after that, we got the Saratoga Fall Mixed Sale up in Saratoga Springs on October 14th. Broodmares and weedlings, especially New York breds, is a great source for that. After that, we got the Kentucky October Yearling Sale, another sale that I'm not going to say flies under the radar, but isn't considered like one of the elite yearling sales. And I think that's a mistake. It's 4 days, a lot of high quality pedigrees in there. You can find some really nice horses. Look no further than Torpedo Anna. We found some good horses there as well. I'm sure John has too. So that's October 20th through the 23rd. The catalog for that is now available online. That'll lead us to the Night of the Stars, the November sale on November 3rd. Cannot wait for that. And appointments viewing, and then Fasig will wrap up an epic record-breaking year with the December digital sale, December 4th through the 9th. Make sure to enter for that and go check it out. Great time leading into the 2026 season to restock your barn with some horses and turnkey horses so you can kick ass on the racetrack in 2026. Shout out to the team at Fasig for an unbelievable year, both in the digital realm and the brick and mortar sale. They do it all. Learn more at Fasig-Tipton.com. Okay, so this news broke pretty much as we were wrapping up recording last week, so we didn't make too much sense when we were talking about it because we were still learning things. But now we've had a full week to digest the Paco Lopez suspension. He was suspended for 6 months last week by HISA for a violation of basically his probation agreement that he signed after the national law incident last December at Parks, where he struck the horse in the face after the race for no reason. And John, I honestly am a little bit surprised at how much the wagons have been circled around Paco Lopez following this incident. Listen, and I want to start this off by saying I get why the jockeys and the Jockeys Guild are sensitive about the whip issue, because there have been a lot of crop violations and fines and suspensions since HISA came into being, obviously the most high profile of which was the Junior Alvarado massive fine for the Kentucky Derby. And I get why they think it's arbitrary, the 6-strike rule. And, you know, they're just trying to do their jobs. The whips have gotten so much more humane that it's not a big deal. They get a little sensitive, like when PETA starts making a fuss about this kind of thing. And I get why they have to stand together. And that's what unions do. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not about the individual actor. Like you'll see police unions defend the bad cops too. And, you know, just reflexively, that's what their job is. So I totally get why John Velasquez and Mike Smith and all these guys are standing behind Paco, because they all feel kind of like they have a target on their back and they're under a microscope now. That being said, let's review what happened. Paco Lopez has been a menace on the racetrack for years and years. He has gotten suspended multiple times for careless riding. He almost killed Romero Mirage a couple of years ago. He caused a pile up in the Fountain of Youth last year. This has been a guy that people have been trying to get suspended for a lengthy amount of time for years, solely because of the danger that he puts his fellow riders in with his reckless riding. So that's the context, the first bit of context for the guy that we're now defending on this 6-month suspension. Let's go back to last December and the incident that I mentioned with national law. If we remember what happened, the horse was drifting out through the stretch. They crossed the wire. The horse had slowed to a walk. There was an outrider right there next to him, and Paco reaches back and smacks the horse across the face for no reason other than that he was frustrated and angry. Now, to me, that alone, considering his past, would have been grounds for a lifetime suspension. There are certain things in this game that should be absolutely unacceptable. And hitting a fucking horse in the face with a whip for no reason other than you're pissed off should be one of those things. So let's now spin it forward. He got a 2-year suspension initially for that incident. His suspension was reduced. I think it was to 50 days or 60 days, whatever it was. Yeah. It was significantly reduced. But the conditions of that reduction were that he would not have a litany of violations of any kind going forward. And he since had 10 different violations of the whip rule, 8 of which were not going over the 6-strike rule. They were reaching his hand above his helmet and smacking the shit out of a horse, which, as we all know, looks terrible to anybody, let alone a casual observer of racing. So, John, I got a lot more to say about this, but I don't want to take up all your time. I just think we have to remember the context, because I see like the quote from Drew Malika where he's like, well, basically like, well, he didn't smack another horse in the face, so he shouldn't be suspended for this length of time. Is that really the standard now? Because he didn't smack another horse in the face with a whip, he shouldn't have gotten a lengthy suspension, even considering his history? John, you can take it away.
Well, you know, there's a couple of things to unpack here, Joe, and I think you're right. You know, Paco Lopez has been a habitual offender. I mean, it's not a 1-off, it's not a 2-off, it's not an 8-off. I mean, over the years, he has been extremely aggressive with his riding tactics, and some would say borderline abusive with the use of the crop on his mounts. One of the reasons why, you know, even though he won graded stake races for us, we haven't used him since he's been suspended. He and his counsel, Drew Malika, they agreed to be on probation in exchange for a reduced sentence. The guy had a 2-year ban sitting in front of him. It got reduced to 60 days, in essence, that everyone agreed upon. And the deal was orchestrated, negotiated, and reviewed and recommended, you know, and ultimately agreed upon by Paco. And Joe, just like any other part of regulations or rules or the law, when you're on probation, which is what they plead and agreed to get the 2-year sentence down to 60 days, it means that you're likely going to be more scrutinized for any additional violations of any kind. And I know what Drew is saying when he says, quote, and this is from the TDN article, when he says, quote, the tenor of the agreement was that he would not comport himself with similar behavior to the national law incident, said Malika. The national law incident was about striking a horse in anger post-race. They're conflating issues to try and punish Paco. The tenor of the agreement, the plain language of the agreement, was that he would not breach the agreement and he did not by committing minor whip violations that were all adjudicated by the stewards. He did not hit a horse in anger. Well, you know what, Drew? I mean, I like Drew. I think he's a good guy. We have, communicated back and forth on this, and I know he's protecting his client, but that's not the standard anymore. The standard, once you get on probation, again, I have not read the agreement. None of us have read the agreement because it's not public. But once you agree to be plead down and you're on probation, it basically means that the organization that is providing you this lesser sentence has the right to come in and give you back, the proper suspensions for the allegation, for the not even alleged, for the actual whip violations. And Joe, it wasn't a one-off, as you mentioned. It wasn't a two-off, as you said. Since March 4th, Paco has been sanctioned an additional 7 times by HISA. That's since March 4th. All of which were either raising the whip above the helmet, which is a $1,000 fine and a suspension at minimum, at Monmouth at least. At Saratoga, when he did it, it was a $1,000 fine and 3 days. At Colonial, when he did it, it was $500 and a 2-day suspension, which was appealed. At Monmouth, again, it was $400 and a 1-day suspension. It goes on and on. So again, it's not just at one racetrack where you'd say, well, the stewards are out to get him, or the jockey colony there is out to get him. This was at Monmouth, Saratoga, Colonial, and Parks. Those are the 4 racetracks that make up the 7 violations. And the thing that blows my mind also is that in the grant, when the jockeys come in and say, we feel like that these rules are draconian, my words, or unfair, I seem to remember that when these rules were all being put together, that jockeys were represented and consulted by HISA in creating the crop rules. So they had a say in it. Now, maybe they're not happy about it anymore because, they feel like they were coerced or forced to accept some rules, and that the rules were going to be in place anyway. So this is kind of the way it is. But it's strange to me that you would, rally around and make Paco Lopez the poster child for the reason that the jockey rules or the whip rules or crop rules are unfair. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And we can get into the other kind of what I would call nonsense that some of the jockeys went on to say, when they gave their plea as far as, kind of free Paco, because they were just that, they were hyperbole. It was like 50% of all these rules don't make sense, and blah, blah, blah. And all these jockeys have violations. So why are we picking on Paco? To me, it's like saying, hey, all of us speed when we're on the parkway or on the turnpike. Why am I getting singled out for speeding? Well, you know what? You violated the rule. And it doesn't matter who got caught. You violated the rule. And by you getting caught doesn't mean you can point to the other 8 jerks that passed you when you were going 80 miles an hour and they should have been caught. If you're violating a rule, then you have to be willing to be subject to the consequences. I have more to say, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, like the analogy here would be if you had 20 speeding tickets already,
right,
and 2 DUIs and a bunch of driving violations, and then you got caught for speeding, got your license taken away. You're complaining that it's the rules are unfair. Again, this was a part of a stipulation that stemmed from Paco Lopez reaching back and smacking a horse in the face with the whip after the race, after the horse had slowed to a walk with an outrider right there. Like, the jockeys do not mention that. Right? If they even reference it at all, they just say the incident in December, because they don't want you to remember exactly what he did. Right. And I don't want to hear that, oh, well, PETA got involved and PETA's making the rules now. I got a news for you. PETA would not even know Paco Lopez's name if he didn't do that in December. Right. There are certain things, again, in this game that should be absolutely verboten. And he's lucky. I think he's lucky considering his entire history and his reputation and all the dangerous things that he's done, that I remember at the time, I was like, they really reduced the suspension to 60 days. Right. I was pissed off about that because there are certain things that you just absolutely cannot do. An abuse of a horse that blatant should be one of those things. So I get why they feel like they have to draw a line in the sand on the whip. And I think that that's what it's about. Like, that it's about the whip and the kind of loggerheads that the jockeys and HISA are at when it comes to the whip rule. And I get that. But this is like, what would have happened? Say like it wasn't the whip. say he was involved in another reckless riding incident and they suspended him 6 months. Would there have been this kind of outrage about his suspension? I don't think so. I think it's them trying to make a stand on this one issue, and I understand why they're sensitive to it. But the bottom line is it's not about this. It's not just about this. This is about a guy who has been given chance after chance after chance after chance throughout his career to ride clean, ride safe, not violate the rules. And over and over and over and over again, he's proven that he cannot do it. He can't. He cannot follow the fucking rules. And he's done it for years and years and years. And the other thing, too, is I get why the jockeys are defensive of him, as I say. Like, I don't think it's necessarily about Paco and about this incident. I think as a union, they're trying to back their guy and their fraternity and make a stand on the whip. I was stunned, honestly, to see all of the people on horse racing Twitter who were like suddenly huge Paco Lopez defenders and backers. These are the same fucking people who wanted his head on a pike after the pile up in the Fountain of Youth and all the incidents that he's caused over the years. And to me, that makes it seem like this is about HISA in certain circles, because there are so many people that I've seen that have been so critical of Paco Lopez and all of a sudden want to stick up for him. I think that there's a broad kind of anti-HISA sentiment across the industry. And I think that is why they're making Paco Lopez into a sympathetic figure after all of these years. And it just completely defies logic and defies belief. Like a cursory look at his history should have told you that he was one strike away from getting a significant suspension. And it's not even like he's banned for life. Right. Or for, like, this is, relatively speaking, this is not that big of a deal considering all of his rap sheet and all of the violations that he's had over the years. And I was just, honestly, I was stunned, John, at the reaction to this. And, especially from the people who aren't jockeys, the people who I've seen been critical of Paco over the years. And I just think at this point, like, any kind of excuse they can take to paint HISA as this, overbearing government bureaucratic agency that's out to punish regular people. They'll take it and they'll run with it. And to me, that's what I saw. And that's what was surprising about the past week.
Yeah, Joe, let me throw some numbers at you that HISA put out there in their press release. And oh, by the way, Lisa does do other interviews other than here at Rail Talk, but we are appreciative that she comes on our show.
Yeah. All the people who say they hate our show anyway are complaining that Lisa only does our show. I thought you hate our show. Don't fucking watch.
I loved, this is a sidebar. I love the tweet that said that we're on the payroll of HISA. They must be sending the checks to the wrong address because I haven't gotten them yet. But anyway, I digress.
And I got a good accountant too.
Yeah, is it the Green Group? Is it 1 8? Had we morph into a commercial? I don't know. Anyway, so Joe, since the start of 2025, 712 jockeys have raced at HISA jurisdiction making racetracks for a total of, I'm going to round, 127,000 total starts. Okay, so out of 127,000 total starts, there have been 25 crop violations. 25. That's it. Out of 127,000 total starts. So the nonsense that the jockey's saying we all have been fined and we've all been guilty of this and we're tired of it. That's nonsensical also. Of the 25 crop violations, how many of them do you think were Paco? This is from the beginning of the year.
I'd say probably at least 10.
So 8 of them. So a third of the violations, 1/3 of the violations are from one individual. Let's not even call him Paco Lopez. Let's call him Mr. Smith. So if Mr. Smith, take all the emotion out of it, if Mr. Smith represented 1/3 of the crop violations for the entire colony for the entire year and had no other rap sheet whatsoever, would you say that person is a habitual violator of the rule and should be recognized and sanctioned for it? Because it sounds to me like that person hasn't learned that there are rules in place and that all the other jockeys are abiding by those rules. The entire colony, except for a handful of people, one of which is Mr. Smith in this example, who represents 1/3 of the crop violations. It sounds like that if anything, they've been too lenient on Mr. Smith because he hadn't had any other violations. Now, let's say that Mr. Smith has other violations to go back to it, not even in anger, but just has other, habitual issues throughout the years of his career. On top of it, again, you say, guy's a slow learner, hasn't learned what the new rules are, even though they've been in place for a number of years. And by the way, the entire jockey colony, except for save a handful of people, understand the rules and abide by them. If anything, the other jockeys should be kicking themselves that this guy is getting away with this and that they have to abide by the rules and play fair. And they are given a disadvantage, in essence, by promoting the fact that Mr. Smith should be freed of all charges. So it just doesn't make sense. I know that Drew Malika is doing his job as an attorney, and he does a very good job of protecting and representing his clients. But there's no way that I can see this as being logical, that you would want to get behind this situation and this person to be the poster child for what's wrong. If you want to come in and say, hey, in light of everything that's going on with these jockeys, we want to come in and talk to you about what's going on and leave the person or the persons who are violating the rules basically on the sideline, and basically say, going forward, we want to know what the science is. We want to know what the rules are. We want to know why it's 6 versus 10, all this. If they want to come in and talk about rules and everything like that, then that's one thing, even though they had a chance to come in the very beginning and they had open forums throughout the rulemaking process to voice their opinions. Be that as it may, we're all busy. We're all lazy. We all have other things going on. And basically, there are reasons, not to do things, not to get active. But if you want to come in now and say, hey, this is our opportunity to have a seat at the table and to go over things and have a better understanding, then I would have a little bit more, respect than just to say, hey, Paco's a brother of ours, and therefore we need to protect him. And I understand what you're saying about unions. It's kind of the way of the world, and that's the strength in the numbers. But this is the wrong person, in my opinion, to pin your hopes and dreams upon, as far as why HISA or any rulemaking body, for that matter, should be removed or things should be changed.
Yeah, and again, I'm going to say it for a third time. This was not an isolated incident. This is a guy who has put other riders in danger for years and years and years, and smacked the horse across the face in anger for the entire world to see. Do not leave that context out. If you're going to defend Paco Lopez, you got to acknowledge the context and the history of this particular rider and why this happened. You can't pretend this is an isolated incident. And also, like I said, this was not the 6-strike rule. This was him, and we've seen it, and it looks terrible. Him smacking the shit out of these horses, raising his hand that high and just pounding them. I don't care if you think that it doesn't hurt the horse. It is a horrible look. And every other jockey in America, including all the top riders, have learned not to do that. And they still win race after race and grade 1 after grade 1. There is zero reason that Paco Lopez can't learn to abide by those same rules, except for the fact that he is a habitual line stepper, in the words of Dave Chappelle, and he does whatever he wants. It doesn't matter what's looming over him in terms of a suspension or probation or anything. He just cannot abide by the rules. He's proven it time and time again. And I don't want to hear that this is an egregious penalty considering his history. It's just completely farcical. Rail Talk is sponsored by Epic Insurance Brokers, one of the nation's top retail insurance brokers, providing expertise across key lines of insurance like property and casualty, employee benefits, and unique specialty insurance. Our buddy Chris Moore leads Epic's equine specialty practice. You see him all over the place at the sales, the backstretch, the races, the owner's boxes, down at the apron. He covers it all. He has horses himself. This is his passion. He lives and breathes racing and breeding. He loves it. He's probably see him at the Breeders' Cup. I would assume. I haven't confirmed that for a fact, but I would be stunned if you didn't turn around at one point and Chris Moore is right behind you, ready to service all of your insurance needs. And that's one of the things that we love about him. This is yearling season still. know, this is equine insurance renewal season. If your policy doesn't renew between July 1st and October 31st, you're leaving money on the table. There's still time to talk to Chris to unify your insurance policies, get all that mess sorted out. There's nobody better than Chris and the team at Epic to go to. Give Chris a call or a text at 317-650-4519. Start the conversation. He's a great dude. Like I said, loves this game, and the team at Epic is second to none. So he guarantees that he'll find you value similar to Lang Green. And, by proxy, we guarantee it too. We wouldn't put him on the show if we didn't back up everything he was saying. So that leads us to this week's
Epic Performance of the Week.
Thank you, booming voiceover. And I feel like this was a long time coming for this week's Epic Performance of the Week, because this horse has had, I think, one of the most remarkable careers in the modern era. And, I was just whining about how the older horses don't stick around in the dirt division. Well, this horse has stuck around. Rebels Romance is this week's Epic Performance of the Week. This is a horse who is now a 7-year-old and won the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic over the weekend. It was a short field, but it was a stacked field, man. You had the 1-2 finishers from the Sword Dancer. You had Farbridge, who was a multiple Grade 1 winner. You had the redistricting for Chad Brown, who won the United Nations most recently. So for a 5-horse field, this was stacked, and Rebels Romance was easily best in there. Let me read you his stats, John. He is now 20 for 29 in his career, which even if you were racing on 5,000 claiming circuit, that would be incredible. But this was his 14th group or graded stakes win. This was his 9th group or Grade 1 win. He's obviously a 2-time winner of the Breeders' Cup Turf as well, and he's going to go into this year's race as a I think prohibitive favorite to make it 3. John, they just don't make them like this anymore. How about Rebels Romance and what he's been able to accomplish?
Joe, it's funny you mentioned, because when we were talking about which of the numerous candidates should be the Epic Performance of the Week, Rebels Romance was I think the 3rd or 4th horse that we mentioned, and we both went duh, of course it's got to be this horse. Achievements, like you mentioned, 20 of 29. Joe, did you know that he has won 20 races on 14 different race surfaces? 14 different racetracks he's won, those races, which to me is amazing. $14.5 million of purse earnings. And don't forget, lest we forget, he was the Eclipse champion turf male last year. I mean, it wasn't like it was, a while ago. I mean, he's running up to his numbers again as a 7-year-old. I love that Dubois is being recognized and out of a street cry mare, which we see more and more here. And again, the Godolphin program is they are like DJ Stable at the highest level as far as I'm concerned. I mean, they are winning races and kicking ass and taking names all over the place. But he is a horse that you want to root for. He's a horse that you love. Rebels Romance, again, winning and showing the rest of the division that he ain't done yet.
No, I mean, what an incredible racehorse. I mean, these are the kind of horses that keep us coming back to the races. Just an absolute machine. Like I said, 7 years old and still kicking ass at the Grade 1 level. This is a horse like that. Like I said, we should have probably recognized at some point already. Yeah. But now this week is an absolute, no doubt, Epic Performance of the Week. Shout out to Rebels Romance. Rail Talk is sponsored by the Green Group, the #1 accounting firm in the horse business. No other CPA firm knows the horse industry like they do. Len and DJ Stable have over 200 horses, including a superstar filly going in a big Grade 1 this weekend. DJ Stable's won over 2,600 races, and the Green Group has close to 1,000 clients in the horse business because they make them money and save them taxes. You hear about it every week, but it's true. And the seemingly endless amount of testimonials that we have seems to back that up, that how many people Len and the Green Group take care of in this industry, because they live and breathe this business. Len is one of the sharpest, smartest guys that you'll meet in the racing industry, and you definitely want to hitch your wagon to his star, especially since there's a complimentary confidential half hour consultation just for you. Yes, you listeners of Rail Talk. Call Len up at, what's that number, Michael Agresta? 732-634-5100. Green Group. Or go to greenco.com. greenco.com. Swing into the sweet sounds of Michael Agresta's Green Group jingle. Nowhere, nothing I'd rather be doing on a Tuesday morning. Go to greenco.com or call them up at that number, but you have to take it from me. You can listen to yet another satisfied customer. Shout out to our homie, friend of the show, excellent analyst for Santa Anita, and just all around fun person in racing, Zoe Cadman.
Zoe!
He is amazing, and he's saving me money hand over fist. I to this day have about 3 emails a week from Len right now. Come on, give me some more write-offs. I need, what's your house doing? What's your car doing? You know, did you buy a pencil today? Like anything and everything.
Thank you, Zoe, and thank you, Len and the Green Group. Don't get left out. You know, there's still time if you filed an extension, not much time, but there's still time to get those returns in for 2024. But there's always a good time to get a jump start on your 2025 taxes. Sit down with Len, call him up at 732-634-5100 or go to greenco.com. Let him help you out and find you savings like he's done for scores of people across the industry already. Okay, so we had the first of our 2 major Breeders' Cup preview weekends this past weekend, mostly at Santa Anita and Aqueduct, and then we're looking forward to Keeneland and Aqueduct this weekend. We'll talk about those races in a little bit, but there was a result outside of those 2 tracks that was pretty notable. It was Mystik Dan winning the Lucas Classic, which has kind of grown in importance over the years. It's a grade 2 now, and I think we were kind of lucky in a way that the rest of Mystik Dan's 3-year-old campaign was so bad that we were able to see him as a 4-year-old, because this is the kind of horse, if he had an incredible 3-year-old campaign where he won the Derby and a couple other races, chances are he would have been retired and sent off to stud. Instead, now we get the comeback story where he was off form for a while and he comes back, and now he wins a couple races at Churchill, his favorite track this year, including the Lucas Classic over the weekend. John, I know you were impressed with him.
Well, the thing that's so much fun for me is watching these older horses actually come back and compete at the highest levels. And you're right. Yeah, he loves the Churchill Downs. I mean, that's where he won the Kentucky Derby. It's where he won the Lucas Classic with another grade 2. But it's just really fun for me as a fan of the industry to watch a horse like that come back at the highest of levels. And I thought it was interesting that after he won the Blame Stakes, immediately after that, Airdrie announced that they were going to stand him at stud at their Midway, Kentucky farm upon the conclusion of his racing career. But they said that it was open-ended as far as how long he was going to be able to race, and the fact that if he continued to compete at the highest level, that they were going to continue to roll the dice and let him run. So now our friends at Airdrie have not 1 but 2 Kentucky Derby winners that ultimately they'll be standing. But I just thought it's a great story. I'm glad to see horses like that, come off of some time off. The horse ran a bad Belmont, came back 6 months later and ran kind of a not great Malibu, finished off the board in a 9th in the Pegasus, and then was given 3 months off again before he actually came back and won finished second in a listed stake, won the Blame, ran close in the Arlington Million and the Stephen Foster grade 1s, and now has another G2 next to his name. So he's got earnings now, Joe, of close to $5 million, the son of Golden Sense. But it warmed my heart to watch a horse like that come back and run. And I'll be curious to see, what they do with him between now and the Pegasus again next year.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's great to see him come back around, and a good job by Kenny McPeek getting him back to his top form. So yeah, it was, like I said, it's a kind of a blessing in disguise that he didn't have a great 3-year-old year beyond the Derby, because we got to see him strut his stuff this year, and he's a super admirable horse. Golden Sense, kind of a blue collar sire, known as more of like a sprinter miler, sire, but he's exceeded that and has kind of outrun his pedigree. And shout out to the owners who continued to campaign him, because that was an exciting win. The other results I wanted to touch on over the weekend, Bob Baffert seems to have the filly and mare division out west pretty cornered between Cavallari and what's that horse, Seismic Beauty. Rishi's a pretty nice horse, is a multiple graded stakes winner. He just has a lot of really nice fillies and mares on that side of the country that I think those horses are going to be like a pretty, a pretty stiff competitor for Torpedo Anna, and then hopefully Nitrogen as well. So I think the distaff has come around to looking like a pretty good race, when earlier in the year it didn't look like we had much in the way of the older filly and mare division. Rebels Romance was awesome in the Joe Hirsch. He's just the ageless wonder. Gunsong, I was there on Friday when she upset Randomized in the Bell Dame. She's become a pretty nice horse. Good job by Mark Hennig with her. Johannes was back in the City of Hope Mile, top turf horse in California last year. And the other thing I wanted to mention was just like, I don't know, it bums me out to see kind of what the Goodwood Stakes and the Woodward have become. Because, and this is kind of goes back to what I was saying about Mystik Dan, where, we probably wouldn't have seen him as a 4-year-old if he had a monster 3-year-old campaign. And just the fact that these horses don't really come back as older horses this year. Now, this year we were pretty lucky to get Sierra Leone and Fierceness and a couple others to come back as 4-year-olds. But in general, like I was looking at the winners of the Goodwood. Nevada Beach won it this year. I got to be honest, I had not heard of this horse before he won the race on Saturday. The year before, Subsanador won. Don't know who that is. Before that, it was Slow Down Andy. Before that, it was Defunded. Before that, it was Medina Spirit. We know a little bit. Improbable, we know a little bit. Mongolian Groom before that. You got to go back to 2018 and when Accelerate won it, before you see a horse that actually factored in the Breeders' Cup Classic who had won the Goodwood Stakes. And it's unfortunate that so many of these older dirt races have kind of fallen by the wayside in terms of importance. And I mean, you look at the Woodward is the same way. I remember this was one of those races that used to be a major day on the calendar at Belmont. I still remember one of my favorite races of all time was Go Zapper and St. Liam hooking up in the 2004 Woodward. Like that was I was there that day. That was like one of the really formative races when I started following racing. Locked won it over the weekend. Like he's a nice enough horse, but he's not going to factor in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Before that, it was Tappet Trice, Zandon. Life is Good in 2002, obviously really nice horse. Before that, Art Collector, Global Campaign, Preservationist, Yoshida, and then you go back to Gunrunner in 2017. So those are two major races that have not had really any impact in the Breeders' Cup Classic in the last 10 years or so. So that is a little bit of a bummer, and I just wonder how long those races are for this world. And I think, unfortunately, when those grade 6 calendars ultimately do get whittled down, to me, John, those are two of the races, especially the Woodward, that kind of should be on the chopping block, unfortunately.
Yeah, and you got to wonder, why that is, other than just that other racetracks have been a little bit more proactive as far as changing dates of some of their preps to basically back end into the Breeders' Cup. But Joe, I want to, we don't talk about California racing that much, and we certainly don't talk a lot about Baffert. But I got to give a tip of the cap to that team for finishing first, second, and third in the Zenyatta, the Grade 2, and the fact that Cavalieri was off since March of this year. So you're talking about a huge 6+ month layoff. And granted, she was even money in the race and ran like an even money horse. But for me, it looked like, that was just kind of a rust knocking race, as I call it, where she was just getting primed and ready for the distaff. So the California distaff fillies and mares are going to be heard from this year, especially because you wonder about, hey, is Torpedo Anna kind of hanging a little bit and maybe not up to her top level? We'll know this weekend as far as where she's at. Darth Vader has run a couple of huge races, and I have not heard that she's running into Spinster. So my guess is that she's going to be taking a little bit of time and going directly into the distaff. But there's a gaggle of older mares, fillies and mares out in California that are going to be like, come on, baby, you're coming into our home turf now, and are running really solid numbers. And again, I was just so impressed by that Daughter of Nyquist to come off a 6-month layoff and really just run like I said, the even money favorite should be. So it's going to be interesting to see how this continues to play out.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, the distaff looks like a much better race now than it did 4 or 5 months ago, in the spring and the early summer. And yeah, we're going to learn a lot more about it on Sunday. We're going to talk about that, the Spinster and the rest of the Keeneland and Aqueduct action this weekend as we really kind of put the final touches on the Breeders' Cup preps. Can't wait to talk about it after this break. Real Talk is sponsored by TaylorMade. Shout out to the team at TaylorMade for another monster Keeneland September sale as the leading consigner. Obviously, they're the one-stop shop for all of your yearling needs, but they do a lot of other things as well. They're boarding mares. They do racing partnerships. They pretty much cover every facet of the industry, and they do it with the utmost professionalism, and they'll make you feel like part of the family. They've done it for John and DJ Stable, and they've done it for so many clients across the business. And the Stallion Barn. I'm gonna keep knocking this home for people that this is the Stallion Barn to me at TaylorMade, pound for pound in terms of like the money that they're able to spend on acquiring new stallions is the best in the business. And obviously Not This Time is the headliner, and his horses just kick ass on the racetrack every single week. But a little horse named Knicks Go is going to have a potential grade 1 winner this weekend with Ewing in the Breeders' Futurity, fingers crossed, at Keeneland. And Knicks Go, John, you also mentioned had a 1-2 over the weekend as well.
First and second on the Tapeta down at Gulfstream. So it looks like that the Knicks Go are also enjoying a third surface now, Joe. Not just the dirt, not just the turf. Nay, they say. And are running really well on the Tapeta as well. So Knicks Go, an underrated stallion in my opinion, and his horses are really starting to hit the ground running this year.
Yeah, and they can do it on multiple surfaces. Yeah, it's not just Ewing. He's had a lot of really nice 2-year-olds in this first crop. So if you are still making breeding decisions for 2026, give TaylorMade a call or go to TaylorMadeFarm.com or TaylorMade Stallions. A lot of nice options on that roster. I mentioned last week we got a couple early votings at the Keeneland sale. So a lot of nice options beyond just Not This Time, because he's obviously sold out. A lot of nice horses in that middle secondary market that can get you a really nice horse, whether you're racing or selling. Go to the TaylorMade Stallion roster and book today.
And Joe, don't forget also that they are going to have the most number of horses in this upcoming October digital sale. So, the place to go if you want to have them represent your horse on the digital platform. They are selling 5 for us, including Vernon Valley, New York bred filly who ran third in an open stake race, and also Velkamp, who ran second first time out, won last time out, and now is going to be on the digital platform through TaylorMade. They do all the videos, they do all the heavy lifting, they do all the paperwork. All I have to do is sit back and watch the numbers increase in value.
All right, so this is one of my favorite racing weekends of the year. It's the final Breeders' Cup prep weekend. I did the math between Aqueduct, Santa Anita, and Keeneland. There are 24 graded stakes this weekend, including a bunch of winning year-ends for the Breeders' Cup. There's so much to talk about, but in the interest of keeping it tight and efficient, we want to mostly focus on the big 2-year-old races and the Spinster for the weekend. We obviously we have personal interest in those races. Ewing, well, you see a nitrogen hat right there. We don't have a Ewing hat yet, but hopefully there's a Breeders' Cup Ewing hat coming our way in the near future. So Ewing drew post 7 of 7 in the Breeders' Futurity, and I thought there was a major similarity between the Breeders' Futurity and the Champagne, which Curtain Call's running in for West Point. Both of those races, I think, John, have horses that if they run their last race are going to be very, very tough to beat. And in the Breeders' Futurity, it's Ted Noffey, and then it's Our Time in the Champagne. They both were just wildly impressive. I think probably the 2 most impressive races that any 2-year-old has run so far this year. It's interesting for Ewing. He's got to go 2 turns for the first time, but so does every horse in the race,
exactly.
Like including Ted Noffey. Blackout Time is the only horse who's kind of done it.
Mm-hmm.
That Ellis Mile is kind of a 1.5 turns, but it's a variable for all 7 horses. Like there's also not much confirmed speed, so you'd expect a fast pace with every horse stretching out in distance. But I don't know, as fast as Ewing is, I think if Jose Ortiz wants to clear, he'll be able to. John, give me your take on the Breeders' Futurity.
Well, I think, as always, Joe, you're spot on as far as analyzing the race. I think that, I'm glad to see that there's only 7 in here, especially because we're on the outside post. It would be a shame if we were in the 12 hole and then you're really scrambling and going into that first turn. But I think basically everyone's trying to accomplish the same goal, and that is beat Ted Noffey. Because if he runs similarly to even his maiden race, he's going to be really difficult to beat. They all have to step up in distance. They all have to step up in class in the sense that, you're looking at one stake winner other than Ted Noffey, and that was in a listed stake on the slop down at Gulfstream Park.
How about Ewing won a stake?
Oh yeah, well that's true. And our Ewing, yes, I know. Shame on me. I'm already discounting our play here. But they all have to step up. They all have to do under the bright lights of Keeneland. And as well as I do that they're going to have a capacity crowd for opening weekend, and it's not the same situation as it is, when they were winning even at Saratoga. This is, where the bright lights hit the big city. And, again, if Ted Nafi runs close to either of his races, I think we're all running for second place. That's not a shocker. But I really feel like that Ewing, especially being a Knicks go out of an Indian Charlie mare, that he is going to be able to go the two turns. Joe, interestingly enough, in watching a lot of the Knicks go and how they've been progressing throughout the 2-year-old campaigns, it looks like that they can handle a different surface as well. So not that I want to say that we don't want to keep Ewing on the dirt, because obviously he's got an unblemished resume so far. But I'd be curious to see down the road just how he can handle an alternate surface if we decide, because that's Cassie's thing, is to try horses on multiple surfaces until he finds exactly what he wants. I think that Curtain Call, because you're being modest, I think Curtain Call has a really good chance in the Champagne. I'd like to hear what you think about the one hole there, and then one of our homebreds, which is going to be a recurring theme for this morning. I is not owned by us, but owned by friend of the show and friend of ours, Robert Cotran, and of course Joe Orsino. Both of them are excited about being in the Grade 1 Champagne, and that race also came up, I think, a little salty, not just with It's Our Time, son of Not This Time, but also there's a lot of horses in there that punched their ticket, their maiden tickets, with 80-something buyers, which is a little bit top heavy in my estimation. That there's a lot of good horses in the Champagne as well.
Yeah, no doubt. It's if It's Our Time doesn't run back to that first race, it's a wide open race, including Mark Cassie's other horse, Just ASAP, I think could win, but Curtain Call outworked him when they worked in company the other day. And I like the fact that we have that hopeful under our belt. He's got 3 starts. No other horse in this race has more than 2. And he got the experience. I hate that we drew the rail again, but he at least got the experience in the hopeful of racing at the rail, taking dirt, being able to swing out, swing back in, and still fight all the way to the wire, because I thought he did well. Ted Nafi obviously ran out way and hid, but I thought he did well to dig in and just lose that photo for Butane for second, 4 lengths clear of the rest of the horses. He's done everything right. He's just one of those horses who has hit the ground running ever since we bought him at OBS March, and he's a quick study, and he doesn't require a lot of maintenance. Like, he does his own thing and is just super professional, especially for a 2-year-old. Ricardo Santana is going to ride because Jose Ortiz is at Keeneland. I think this is a race that, I know you don't have like a confirmed front runner, but a lot of these horses ran really, really fast first time out. That's why I think AI is a little interesting in this race. He could get the setup, stretched down another furlong, a lot of speed signed on. So I'm hoping we'll sit I'm hoping we get out of the gate clean under Santana. We'll sit like 4th or 5th early on, get into the clear, and be able to make one run on the outside. But yeah, it's crazy exciting. We're going to have probably close to 50 partners and their friends and family at Aqueduct on Saturday. Nice. I'm going to be there. Yeah, even Meg might make an appearance, and I never usually subject her to Aqueduct. So it's a huge day. It's a really huge day. It's one of my favorite races in New York. It's obviously a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup. So hopefully we get both of the boys to the Breeders' Cup. But that's kind of what I wanted to ask you, John, before we touch on anything else. Is the question becomes in these kind of races, what do they have to do to earn a trip to Del Mar? Obviously, if he or Ewing win or run second, you're going. Right. What about third? What about fourth? You obviously need to see how it plays out. But John, what's your take on what you personally, forgetting all the other owners and Cassie and all that, what you personally would need to see from Ewing to definitely go west for the Breeders' Cup?
I think Ewing has to show 2 things. Number one is that he can actually physically go the distance, that he can go the 2 turns in the mile and 16th, which is asking, it's no easy task. And I really like the fact that we won going 5.5. We stepped him up in distance to go 6.5, and he handled that with no problem. And you would think, based on his running style, that he could get to the front and just like Proud Papa, Nick's Go, get to the front and then slow it down and then kind of make it a sprint for the last 3/8 of a mile. And that's what you're hoping to do. But in my eyes, Joe, your horse has to run first or second or have just an absolute egregious reason why you think that the horse should be in. Because quite frankly, if you don't finish first or second, then you are at the mercy of the voters at that point. And just take a step back. It's not as easy as like, hey, I'm going to enter the race. And then like most stake races, there's a written condition as far as which horses get preference. Graded stakes earnings, graded stakes wins, graded stakes earnings, or what have you. The way the Breeders' Cup is set up, there's 7 spots that get in automatically, either through, in this order, the win you're in preference, points, which you earned in all the graded stake races. And then once half the field is designated, the other half of the field has to be voted in by a panel. So you're really at the mercy of their discretion at that point. So you have to put on a display in these races coming up this weekend to prove that either you're one of the top horses in each of the respective fields, or there was such a major reason why you didn't get to run to your full potential and that you have some back class that you deserve to be in. Now, I think Ewing checks the box by winning a grade 2. And especially at Saratoga, he's undefeated, his first 2 starts at Saratoga. So I think that if he ran a close third or got bothered for whatever reason and just couldn't, was making a run, but just couldn't get to the front at the end, where you don't have to campaign too hard and the voters will act accordingly. Otherwise, Joe, I think you're wasting your time because these are, the top 12, 14 horses of each division. And quite frankly, if you can't make a case that you're legitimately and unemotionally, when you look at your horse's resume, that you're legitimately one of the top 10 or 12 horses in the field, in the division, then it's a lot of money and expense for the experience of running kind of a lackluster 5th or 6th in the championship race. So to me, we've done this. We've been fortunate enough to do it for a number of years. We didn't lobby hard for a couple of horses, but last year we lobbied extremely hard for Nitrogen, even though she ran 3rd in the grade 1 up in Canada and was technically still a maiden at that point. We still lobbied and wanted her. I say lobby like we made calls and stuff. We didn't, but we still wanted to run her in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Filly race. And she actually drew in. I think a couple of days beforehand. So we actually had to ship her out there, not knowing if she was going to run in that race or if she was going to run in the undercard race on the turf. I don't remember. I just don't honestly remember if there's an undercard 2-year-old dirt race. I think there is, just in case like one of these horses doesn't get in, but is also eligible. So they would be like one of the prohibitive favorites in the undercard on Future Stars Friday.
Yep. I also should mention that the American Pharaoh is on Saturday as well at Keeneland. That's only a 6-horse field. Bob Baffert has 4 of them in there. He's also sending litmus tests, who I like a lot, for the Breeders' Futurity. But you got to consider those horses as well as major contenders. No Brandt though. I was a little surprised to see Brandt and none of the preps this weekend. So we'll see if he's still going to end up in the Breeders' Cup after his impressive summer. But yeah, it's a really fascinating race weekend, but especially for the 2-year-olds. Saturday's card at Keeneland is just phenomenal with all those, the First Lady, the Coolmore Turf Mile, both had full fields. You got the TCA, the Woodford. So, especially the second half of that card on Saturday at Keeneland is as good as it gets outside of the Breeders' Cup, especially this time of year. Let's talk about Sunday and the Spinster. You got a couple more graded stakes on Sunday at Keeneland, highlighted by the Spinster. To me, it looks like a match race on paper. I don't want to slight anybody else. Jin has a couple of big races. I've always thought Scylla is a little bit of a phony, but she's got some figures that would put her close. But to me, the major showdown everybody wants to see is Nitrogen against Torpedo Anna. And, we've spent a good amount of this year saying that maybe Torpedo Anna has lost a step. Mm-hmm. I want to be clear that even if that's true,
Yeah.
Nitrogen has to step up.
Absolutely.
To beat, and the rest of them do, but Nitrogen has to step up to beat Torpedo Anna because, if she's like a 8 out of 10 instead of a 10 out of 10 that she was last year, she still has run so many races that tower over this field.
Mm-hmm.
She was game in the personal ensign. She's got the tactical speed. She drew outside. So, I think she has a lot of stuff working for her in a 5-horse field. I mean, tactically, how do you guys approach this with the short field? You kind of got everything your own way in the Alabama. You got to sit outside Lacara, who didn't want to go 1.25 miles and get the jump on Good Cheer, who kind of like faded a little bit the second half of the year. This is a major step up in weight class. So how do you approach it from a tactical standpoint, John?
I really think the race is going to play out, Joe, where to me, we have to be going into the stretch. We have to be within a length of Torpedo Anna, or we're not going to be able to catch her. That's not to say we wouldn't be in front of her, but I think at the minimum we have to be within a length or of the reigning champ in order to have a puncher's chance at beating her. I think there's enough speed in the race where it's not going to be a matter of somebody going out there and slowing it down to a 48 and change and then making it a 3 furlong sprint at that point. And I think that if you look at the jockey colony that's riding these 5 individual horses, arguably they're all the top, 5 of them are probably in the top 7 riders right now as far as the way that they're riding. So it's going to be a chess match. It's going to be a chess match, not only within, how these horses are running, but also who moves first, who gets blocked, who has to go around horses as opposed to being able to keep the rail trip. And I think there's a horse in here that maybe is in there for the free lunch, but there's 4, I think, legitimate horses in here. And hopefully, we're considered one of the top 4 going into the race. I thought it was interesting. The Juddmonte horse, it is interesting to me because at first when I looked at it, I was like, well, she's a sprinter that's trying to stretch out, from 7/8 to 9 furlongs. And that's a big ask. But then if you go deeper into her pedigree, into her race record, even as recently as last summer, she was winning going 8.5 and 9 furlongs and winning grade 2s and grade 3s. I think that she's going to go out certainly in front and with Jin and hopefully play a catch me if you can kind of race. And I think it's a matter at that point of, are we good enough? We do have to step up. There's no question in my mind that we have to step up in weight class here in order to beat a couple of these older, more seasoned mares. But Joe, she's never trained better. She's never felt better. I'm talking about Nitrogen. And I'm really happy to see that it's a 5-horse field again, as opposed to, an 8 or 9 or 10 horse field where we're going to have to really, weave through traffic. And I know you and I rail against the machine, no pun intended, being real talk, about all of these 5-horse fields, these 6-horse fields, how terrible they are. You know what? When you're running in one, that's what you want. You want a 5-horse field. And I'm hoping that there's a scratch, going into the day of the race. But, Torpedo Anna, and I said this to McPeak at the September sale. I said, look, we're all looking up at you. We're all looking up at your filly at this point and hoping that you stub your toe, and that you don't have, the absolute perfect trip. Because if you do, if you're on your A game and you get the perfect trip, then, we're all running for second at this point. But I'm excited about it. We're all going down there. And Joe, incidentally, we have a horse in Vinter, who won impressively first time out running in the Bourbon. Next,
Let's start with me
in that race. But Joe, this isn't a, hey, I'm going to break my arm patting myself on the back. This is, I feel so fortunate to be in this position. We have seven horses that either we own or bred that are running in win and you're in races this weekend, between Ball of Fire in the Pilgrim, Chopsticks that we own the half of in Wonderland, who's one of the favorites in the Frizette. You guys have Curtain Call, and we bred AI. We have El Barrio, who's a homebred of ours that's in the Miss Grillo. Obviously, Ewing, we mentioned, Nitrogen, a homebred, and then Vinter. And last year we had a similar number of horses at this stage that were all kind of nipping at the heels of possibly getting a Breeders' Cup bid. But I think if we can get 2 of them into the starting gate for California, I would feel very, very fortunate. That's just the way the numbers work out. Because again, you're talking about running your horses in the against the respective best of the best, at least geographically in their respective divisions. And it's not easy. So I'm very appreciative and I'm very, very much looking forward to rooting on all those horses, including Curtain Call as well, because I feel like that's a home team horse as well, and just have an excuse to be able to fly out to California, for Halloween.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing with us too. We got a bunch of other horses who could potentially punch their tickets for the Breeders' Cup. In addition to Curtain Call and Ewing, we have Intricate Spirit, really nice 2-year-old turf sprinter, is running in the Futurity on Friday at Aqueduct. I'm going to be there for that. He's super fast, salty field, but we were very, very high on him. We also have Vava running Saturday in the Phoenix. She's kind of had an in and out type year, but if she runs well on Saturday, she's going to go to the Breeders' Cup. So, Meg asked me like, hey, are you going to the Breeders' Cup? I'm like, we'll see. After this weekend, this is the weekend where everybody's got to punch their tickets. Yep. We could have anywhere from 1 horse or maybe 0 horses, hopefully not, to 4 or 5 horses going to California after this weekend. So it's crazy exciting. And yeah, if you're betting too, like it's a monster weekend for the West Point 2-year-olds. Intricate Spirit, Ewing, Curtain Call. Liberation is in a great spot on Friday at Santa Anita. She's probably going to be a short price, but she's super live in there. And then Sunday, we got 2 2-year-old fillies who actually are workmates who are running. Thankfully, the race split. They both got in on Sunday at Keeneland. Determined Ace, who's a first-time starter in the 5th race at Keeneland. She probably needs the race, but she's shown talent. And then in the 7th race, Paige Turner, who was second first time out at Saratoga, she is crazy live in that race. So if you are betting, just keep an eye out for the West Point 2-year-olds this weekend, because we're high on pretty much everyone that's running. But yeah, this is why you get in the game. This is why you put in all the hard yards, you spend all the money, you lose all the money. In my case, this is for weekends like this. Where you have skin in the game and you got a bunch of horses who are one step away from getting to the biggest dance outside of the Derby that we have in this business. So can't wait, have a great time in Keeneland. Everybody who's there, everybody who's going to be at the Big A this weekend, can't wait to see you guys. So yeah, enjoy it, racing fans, get tied on, as they say. It's just going to be an action-packed weekend full of the greatest stars that we have in this game. All right, so that's going to do it for episode 107 of Rail Talk. It was a spicy one. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks to my co-pilot, Jon Green. Thanks to our producer, Patty Wolf. Shout out to our associate producers, Julia Agresta and Nathan Wilkinson. Don't forget to subscribe to the show. We're knocking down the door of 25,000 subscribers on YouTube. Go hit that button that John's pointing to on the screen right now, or go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, wherever you are. John, this is multiple weeks in a row that I've remembered to plug the subscriptions. Patty must be so proud. Where is she?
Cue crickets.
I'm a good boy. I'm a good student. Anyway, thank you for watching, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Comment, like, all that stuff. We might even reply to you on YouTube. We love our fans. We love engaging with them. So shout out to y'all for watching and for the support. We'll see you next week back here on Rail Talk.